Welcome everyone to another episode of Kiwi Talks. I have in the building with me Gemma Major, who is the founder of Seed Waikato. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Of course. Happy Saturday.
Yeah, happy Saturday. So tell me how this all happened with Seed Waikato, your decision to found it and how it all started and the idea of it.
Wow. Yeah, right. Okay, let's go back 2016.
Okay.
Few years, yeah.
Yep.
I was working for Momentum Waikato and we were doing a project called Waikato Vital Signs, diving into some of the community needs and aspirations around a bunch of different themes.
Yeah.
And we did a youth piece and found that young people were really looking for spaces and places to contribute, to develop, to connect. And so at the time, I also was on a young leadership program with Rotary and met a young man who'd moved up from the South Island. And he talked about his experience of loneliness moving to Kirikiriroa and not really having a community to connect in with. And also just wanting to know what was going on, like how he could vibe and connect in with different things. And so I thought, okay, well, let's see what's going on in the youth space. And there was just really nothing serving 18 to 35-year-olds, that kind of millennial bracket.
Which seems weird because I found out recently that Hamilton has, the highest youth population in the
country.
Yeah,
or one of the highest.
Or one of the highest, or the highest per capita.
Yeah. There's a lot of young people. I think by 2025, half of the population will be under 25. So, it's a really youthful city, but we just didn't have many youth-led initiatives at the time. There was a few organisations that were doing stuff to young people. They were like older people doing things to younger people, and that's fine. It's got its place. But I just felt like, where are the young people leading things for themselves, being involved with the design and implementation? So we got a bunch of young people together and who kind of resonated with that desire to find ways to meaningfully connect with each other, to give back and to develop and learn and grow.
Were these uni students?
There were a mix. There was some uni students, there was some working professionals, there was some that were just in between things, trying to find their thing. But yeah, we got together, did some interviews with some more young people to find out, like, is this something just unique to our little group or is there more of us? Yeah. And there was a lot. There was a lot.
There was a
lot. And so we threw an event together and had about 90 young people down at the Hamilton Gardens, and we talked about resilience and just invited 3 local leaders to talk on the topic. Yeah. And it just resonated so deeply. I think this intersection of a safe space for young people to come together, it's our place to connect with some really inspiring people, something interesting to say. And then I guess using storytelling as a format for young people to understand how it could apply to them. You know, when we hear great stories, you draw out your own golden nuggets and find out what relates, and then something stick, and it just kind of naturally progressed from there, really. So we started doing a few more events, got the legal structure in order, formed a committee, do all the stuff really to...
How long does that take?
Honestly, do not get me started on building a charity. Like, wow.
Well, we've got a long time.
This, part of my other work's in philanthropy because we seriously need some systems change on just how challenging it is to, and rightly, we have the most charities.
Yeah, I read that
per capita.
Was it Calvin? I think Calvin, when he was on here, he said that New Zealand is second only to America when it comes to charitable donations.
It's insane. Yeah, for charitable donations, we're one of the most charitable, most giving countries in the world, and that was in a giving report that was out recently. I think we're number 2 now. Yeah. But we have the most charities per capita in the world. So, there is a real need for it to be difficult to set up a charity, for sure, because we don't need 100 youth organisations trying to create positive impact with youth. We need to strategically think about what outcome would we like to see in the youth space, what is the aspiration, what's the need, and how do we get there, rather than a whole lot of people setting up a charity thinking they've got the way to get there, So rightly so, it should be a challenge. But My God.
Is it the legal stance of it, or is it just a lot of paperwork?
It's a lot of admin, and we're young people, got an idea, want to make it happen, let's go, and it's like, okay, what are the charitable rules? What legal structure are we an incorporated society with charitable status? Are we a charity? Then there's, you need a formal committee. Then you need formal meetings. You need minutes. You need a chair, secretary. You need to pass resolutions. And it's not that these things are like they've got their place. Like you need good governance to be able to do great stuff. I fully get that. But it's just like this whole like the entrepreneurial spirit that's lean and nimble and, it's like really you put on the brakes because you've got, these structural things in place. And it's a really big barrier for a lot of other young people. I mean, I've met so many young people over the last couple of years that have an idea that come to me, I've got a heart for this, want to make it happen. Here's a little pop-up project I've got. I said, well, do you have a legal structure? How are you going to get funding to support this?
Yeah.
Because without that charitable status, you don't qualify for philanthropic funding in most cases. So it was really important we did that work at the start to be able to gain that structure so we could attract funding to be able to grow the aspiration of the organisation. But it's certainly been a real challenge because once you get the structure, then you need to be able to prove that you're going to stick around and that this isn't a pop-up, pop-out kind of thing, hot in the moment, So then, you're still really trying to make something significant work with very little resource.
So how do you manage that?
Well, we've managed that through the incredible generosity of local businesses and through the insane contribution of volunteers.
Yeah. So how do you just reach out to a business and try to explain to them what Seed Waikato is?
It goes both ways. There's some businesses that are really passionate about youth development and want to align with an organisation like Seed. But in other cases, it is reaching out to different businesses that I know really care about our community, and it isn't just a PR thing to throw a bit of money here and say, we did that, It's a bit more meaningful in its alignment.
Yeah.
But, Seed is built off the back of volunteers, really, young people that have given their time to volunteer to do accounting or
How many volunteers
legal
do you
stuff. At the moment, maybe 10 in permanent roles.
10?
Yeah, yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite a bit.
Yeah. It's an incredible group of young people wanting to achieve something remarkable.
Yeah.
So... yeah, and that's what we have to do for now, There will always be a role for volunteering in the organisation. But definitely, I quit my job and worked for free for 5 months to get Seed really moving and I guess going a bit more beyond those events. Like, what else could we do here to really serve the aspirations of young people? And so we ended up doing some wellbeing subsidies. We did different workshops. We've now done an education pilot around soft skills and teaching young people resilience and confidence. We did a political project recently to drive youth engagement in local politics. We've done mentoring. And so it just ended up being this kind of experimentation phase.
Do you just work in conjunction with your team to decide what are the best events to hold and how to reach young people more?
Yeah, I guess...
or do you ask them directly?
We ask. It's a tool. Yeah, design thinking is at the heart of what we do.
Yeah.
So... asking good questions is really important because if you ask a question and they give you an answer, but, that actually wasn't really how you could create that change you were looking for, you've got to go back. But, right. Design thinking has been really important to us. How can we be led by the aspirations of our community and really serve that need with young people along the way? That's really at the heart of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And I suppose leadership is a core principle of Seed, I suppose, training younger people to be leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that leadership, though, is more about how might we facilitate conversations, experiences, and opportunities for the young people involved in Seed to realize their potential and step into their greatness. So what that looks like is more, putting them into different scenarios that they might not have put their hand up for because they didn't see themselves in that way. Or it's working through some of those limiting beliefs that they've got about themselves that are holding them back from being able to step into their greatness. And so...
Do you chuck them in the deep end sometimes?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I think sometimes we have a fear of stepping outside of our comfort zones.
I'm constantly in the deep end with what I've never done this before,
So how do you convince yourself? I mean, do you have people pushing you to do this stuff, or do you just make yourself step out of your comfort zone?
I've always been somebody that, I've got an inner cheerleader and I've got an inner soccer mum.
Right.
And the soccer mum is insanely motivating, massive growth mindset principles in there around, and I've got to be kind with that because the soccer mum can be a bit rough at times, know. How could we do it different? What have you missed? What's a better question to ask? What did you learn? It's just this constant series of questions and reflections to move through that progress.
I see.
But there's certainly some incredible mentors around me as well that have definitely led me in different directions that I didn't see for myself as well. People that have seen the greatness within me and helped nurture that and nurture my potential. So, it's the inner soccer mum coupled with a couple of awesome people keep me in line.
So what do you think? What do you think a key aspect of leadership is?
I would say service.
Yeah.
For me, it's service. And in order to serve, you need to ask questions to help you understand what that service could and should look like. It's not about coming in and determining a particular direction or, thought or project or whatever.
Can you see some people, though, that might have a natural knack for it? Like they'd naturally just be leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. But like what I mean is because there's sometimes a negative view in terms of if you ask too many questions, because some people are like, oh, you shouldn't ask that, or I shouldn't ask this because I might be viewed as an idiot.
Well, I don't care what people think. I
know you don't. I know you don't. But what I mean is there'd be some people probably that have the potential within Seed, for example, but they don't ask the questions because maybe, or ask you directly because they're worried, oh, I don't want Gemma to think that I'm a loser.
Well, then that's on me for setting a vibe,
Well, you don't give up that vibe. I'm just saying. But it might be just their own insecurity due to previous events or
absolutely,
whatever.
Absolutely. It's so important then to, that's for me further emphasizes the importance of developing those meaningful relationships with people so that you can get to the point where we can talk about the real stuff. What's holding you back? What are some of the beliefs that or the stories you've been telling yourself about the reasons why you can't do a thing? Or, have you spent the time to sit and dream? And what does that look like? And one of my mentors actually said to me, Gemma, I'm a dreamer, absolutely. That's my space. I love to dream, turn ideas into reality. But it's an absolute privilege to be able to dream when so many circumstances are affecting so many of our young people. And so that's really important, I think, in service is to understand, my dream is to see other people be able to dream. But what are those barriers that are in place for young people?
Yeah.
And how do we reduce them so that we see more young people thriving and contributing. That's what excites me.
Yeah, totally. Do you have much one-on-one though, or do you allocate it more to your team now to do those sort of things?
I would say we're all playing a role in a bunch of different stuff at the moment.
Because you must be very, very busy.
I don't like that word.
Okay, what's another word for busy? Challenge.
Purposefully occupied. If I'm completely honest with you, before I went on maternity leave, it was insane. It was trying to build different processes and systems and train people and grow the team and build a new committee, and it was a lot. But this time out has been really awesome to kind of reflect on what some of my challenges are as a leader. And that's certainly, front and center for me is I lack focus often. I want to do all things for all people. And, if you do that, you can't do anything
focus
well.
in on one thing because you're doing too many things at the same time.
I see all this opportunity or possibility, and I'm like, well, we could do that. Okay, so let's do that. And it's like, no, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And so my learnings over the last kind of 6 months being out is just, hey, if we got laser sharp focus on one thing or two things as an organization, we would tenfold our impact even more, And so at the heart is really that impact, like, by doing all this stuff, it's, wow, but we need to get back to what's really at the heart, which is, transforming and empowering young people to step into their potential and do great things. So, yeah, that's been cool to have a bit of time to reflect on what some of my, I want to call them balconies are as a leader and learnings are in building Seed so far.
So where do you want to see Seed within, say, the next 5 years, 10 years?
This is a question I'm pondering at the moment. But I think it's not for me to answer. It's also a question that the community needs to answer with me,
well,
with us.
Sometimes some charities or companies, they just take on a natural evolution.
Yeah.
You don't even really decide where it's going to go. It just kind of ends up going
in a
that
direction.
way. Yeah. There's still quite a lot of young people, I'd imagine, that still don't even know what Seed Waikato is.
Oh, hugely.
Yeah. So how do you go about reaching these people?
These people, my young people. We at the start used social media. It was insane how effective social media
It's the way of the future in terms of marketing.
Whoa.
This is why a lot of television companies and media companies are losing a lot of money.
Yep. Going on social. Yep. And that was really, really awesome for those events. But I think going forward, what's going to be really important is not necessarily the number of people that are involved in different things. It's not necessarily how many people can we reach the most, how big can it be? But it's more about how deep can we develop those relationships with young people and how transformational will that impact be?
Yeah.
And so that's a different conversation than when you think about growing Seed. It's not like, let's chuck up an ad and do a boost and whatever, It's more relationship, meeting young people, connecting in where they are.
Because I think I found out about it through just someone telling me about it.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Seed Waikato? And I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
And then,
through work or?
I think it was someone who was already going.
Okay, yeah.
And then I think they told me about it. And then at some point, I think some event was on Facebook. And you know how sometimes you scroll through your news feed and it tells you that someone else has gone is going to an event, even if you don't even know about the event. And I was like, what's this? And that's how I learned about it.
What event was that? What was your first one?
I think it was in September last year. You had a couple of guests.
September last year.
Oh, this year. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm getting my years mixed up. Yeah, September this year.
This year, that was Brianne West from Addictive? Was it? No.
Maybe. Well, Jason Dawkins was there.
Oh, Jason. So Jason.
Was that September? I can't remember. I'm terrible.
That would have been May or June, maybe. I don't know. That was
okay, well, I've got my months all out of whack.
It's okay. It's nearly Christmas. What did you think? What drew you to come along?
Well, I'm originally from Auckland. And I think when you move to a new city, and particularly in my case, I didn't move and I started going to a university or some type of, polytech or anything like that. I just kind of started a new job. And so I was limited to pretty much my workplace. And I wasn't really doing any sports things or anything. And it can be sometimes very difficult to meet people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it was kind of a way for me to meet new people as well. Because I like meeting new people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you find, the space? Like, did you meet some new people?
Yeah. And it had a really, really good vibe to it.
Yeah.
The only problem is like with those sort of things is you don't really get around to talking to everyone that you can. Like, particularly if you're on one table. You tend to be on that table. Yeah. So I tried to I wanted to talk to Jason and I didn't even get a chance to talk to him. Yeah. But I met Louise.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. That's where I first met Louise. And obviously I met yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did meet like a few people, but then obviously podcasting has kept me busy and I haven't been able to go to all the events. But yeah, I definitely do want to go again at some point. Because how often do you have them? Is it every couple of months?
We were doing them every month.
That would be real hard to maintain, surely. Yeah,
the events volunteers are remarkable. They pull it together, really. And, you know, it's not just like we'll invite some people in and do a thing. You know, it's a really well-run event, you know.
Yeah.
We've had a few people. I remember Jamie Strange came along and said the events are so well run that he'd never been to another event that was so well run. I was like, whoa, Jamie, that's pretty cool.
I had him on here, eh? He's a nice guy.
Yeah. He's lovely.
Yeah, he's a very, very lovely guy. Oh, that's a huge compliment for him to say that.
Oh, wow, I thought so too. Because he goes to
heaps of events, I'm sure.
I was like, are you just being political? Or like, is this a real compliment? No.
He seems like a genuine guy, though.
He is, for sure.
Because you know how there's some politicians that just... they just lie through their teeth, or they're just saying what they want. They think that you want to hear.
Yeah.
I get the vibe from him that he's not like that.
Nah. And he's got a youth development background, you know, he's a teacher. He's real cool.
Yeah.
What about the the speakers? What did they do for you when you were at the event?
I think it depends, on what type of style speaker you like.
Yeah.
Bit of an interesting background, but years ago, because I used to be like a very, very religious person, and so I used to attend church quite regularly.
Yeah.
But it was one of those it's not like a Catholic church, but more one of those modern day Pentecostal churches.
Stop.
So I'm used to like preachers being like, yo, be on fire for God, you know, like, so I was used to that style of speaking, because in some ways, I suppose, pastors are in a way just public speakers or lecturers.
Fantastic public speakers.
So if you've got a very, very good speaker, you know, it really resonates with you. And now and then they'd have like a guest pastor in from America or some other country. And if I didn't believe what they were saying, I would just switch off and start zoning out about, what should I have for lunch? You know, just stuff like that. So it really depends on the speaker. Like Jason Dawkins, for example, he's very direct, and he's got a lot of charisma and body language in the way he speaks. So it's really easy to be engaged when he's speaking. So it just depends on the speaker. But some people don't like that, because I've talked to some people and they're like, this isn't a performance. Yeah. So I think it depends on the person, but you can't satisfy everybody.
No, and that's why we chose to have a couple of speakers at every event.
Yeah.
Because then if Jason isn't your thing, it's okay. In 11 minutes, it's going to be finished. And then there's somebody else that might resonate on a deeper level for you.
Yeah.
But it's funny you bring up church, because I also grew up in a rah-rah Pentecostal church.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my gosh. Massive in Australia, like huge.
Oh, yeah,
mosh pits.
Hillsong.
Hillsong. I was at Hillsong, and I went to City Point College, a really big Christian school in Brisbane. And the model of church hugely inspired the model of Seed in ways, because, you know, it's a group of people coming together to be inspired about something that should resonate at a soulful level for you in your life.
Yeah.
And we've also toyed with the idea, you know, you would have done life groups when you were at church.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yep.
What would it look like once a week or once a month to get together with a bunch of like-minded people in someone's home and just go a bit deeper on what we talked about at church, you know, in a non-church way. But
I mean, I think there's, within non-religious circles, there's sometimes they view church and they just roll their eyes sort of thing. But I think
it's a community.
Yeah, it is a community, just like there are other communities. And I think because of films and media, I think some people's perception of church is the old Catholic style where you just sit in a church.
In the pew. Sit quietly.
And I'm like, if you go to modern day churches, it's not like that at all. Sometimes it feels like you're having a party.
Oh, totally. It's a vibe.
It's like a concert sometimes with, you know, because they have a full on stage and a full on band and, you know, and they're getting really into it. Yeah.
I've actually started going to Todotini, which is just down the road.
Yeah.
And they have such awesome music and such a cool vibe. People are really down to earth, shoes off, just like come as you are. And, and that's been really nice to connect back in with that spiritual part of me. But definitely understand what you're saying about the rah-rah and the let's get down the front and mosh.
Yeah. Because there'd be the odd time where I'd take people to church and they'd be like, okay,
I get
this is not what I thought it would be. I'm like, what did you think it would be? Well, those movies.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know what you're talking about.
Stupid media.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's cool that you're actually inspired by it because there's a lot of positive aspects, and I think it's very, very good in terms of the community building.
Totally. And service as well, like you get involved with church and then you might volunteer to do kids' church. And, like the model, I guess, of volunteering and generosity and giving back.
Yeah,
I mean, it's there.
That's church, yeah.
Of community and connecting with people at a real level, where if you're moving house, somebody knows and they'll probably rock up and give you a hand.
Do you work any with conjunction with any of the churches within Hamilton?
Oh, no. Seed is like apolitical, agnostic.
But what I mean is more in terms of like young people within churches. Are there any like people that go to church that also go to Seed in terms of where you've advertised? Maybe?
I'm not sure. I don't even know. I mean, there's definitely some people
because I went to there's a church when I first came down here. I was at Hamilton Girls High School.
Arise.
Yeah. Yes, that was it. And there's a hell of a lot of young people there. Yeah. So I'm wondering,
do you connect in?
Yeah, would they even know what Seed Waikato is?
Not sure.
Yeah.
Not sure.
But interesting talk though.
Yeah.
So you've also, because you did a bit of stuff for the Hamilton Central Business Association.
Yeah.
You spent some time there. What were you doing there?
I was just, I was a council appointed member, so I was just on the committee, really.
So what do they do? What does the committee actually do?
What do they do? That is
I think when
the
people
question.
say, I'm on a committee.
It's like, what do you do, bro?
Yeah. It's like, because I'm trying to get Helen Clarke on here.
Yeah, wicked.
And she's...
Auntie Helen.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. But obviously she spent some time in the UN.
Yeah.
But I actually just want to ask him, like, what
do you do?
What do you actually do in the UN? I think some people are like, you can't ask that. But I'm like,
no, ask it.
I don't actually think a lot of people know. They're just like, the UN, it kind of just oversees things.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but what do you actually do?
These are very good questions.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to ask them. No.
Yeah.
What do you do?
But then it comes back to the fear of, you don't want to ask a question because it makes you look like an idiot.
No way. Be bold,
Yeah.
Somebody's
but if I don't know
asking.
something, I'm going to ask it.
Get
regardless of whether I look like a dork or not.
I love it.
So anyway, segue there. But the committee thing. So what was your role mainly?
So it was really Vanessa is incredible. She is an absolute weapon and rips around just bringing different projects, linking people, and really activating the vibrancy of the CBD. And so a lot of it at times was really a soundboard for what's really going on, what projects are moving, what collaborations are happening, obviously looking at the finances and making sure that everything's in check there. The CBD Awards as well.
Yeah.
Have you heard about them?
I have heard about them.
Yeah.
I would love to go.
Absolutely get amongst it next year.
But you have to be invited, don't you?
You can get a ticket.
Oh, can you?
You absolutely can.
Okay, all right.
None of this exclusive stuff.
All right. I thought, for some reason, I thought it was.
Yeah, no.
Okay, but now I know.
So there's a bit of planning and sometimes assessing around CBD awards. But it was a very short stint. I realised that I really wanted to focus my time and energy in philanthropy and youth development. And so I stepped off that and got involved with Philanthropy New Zealand. Yeah.
But do you understand now from someone who's been on the inside with the Central Business District Association, like what, how you hear people that say, the Hamilton CBD is dead.
Yeah.
But can you actually, from being in there and seeing how it all works, and do you understand why, like, are the perceptions wrong for starters?
I think everyone has 2 cents about everything. There was a lot of frustration about, why can't I park outside the shop that I want to go to? And it's like, we are a growing city now. Yeah. That is not the reality anymore.
You go to any CBD. I mean, I was just in Auckland last week. I'm like, you're not going to be parking out in front of any shop.
And for free.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, that's an interesting concept. But look, to be honest, I didn't get too into the detail on some of those things.
I should get Vanessa on.
Get Vanessa on. She is a pocket rocket. And she is just a dynamo at making stuff happen that is building the vibrancy of the CBD. You know, it's remarkable what she does. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll have to get her on.
Yeah. Shout out, Vanessa.
Yes, Vanessa. Please come on. So Philanthropy.
Yeah.
Because you on what's the name of the organisation?
Philanthropy New Zealand.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. So what do you want to know?
Well, one, why you chose to get into Philanthropy New Zealand, and then what was actually involved.
Yep.
With the organisation.
Yep, sure. So when I was working at Momentum Waikato, that I had no idea what philanthropy was when I was at uni. I was studying management and majored in strategy, and just knew by fourth year I didn't want to work in corporate. I wanted to align my personal values with my mahi. Mm-hmm. And Cheryl Reynolds, the inaugural CEO of Momentum, came and spoke at one of my classes. I had absolutely no idea about half the stuff she was saying, but I thought that's, you know, a really inspiring woman who has aligned her values to do something meaningful in the world. And so I started volunteering and then became the second employee there. And through that process of kind of going, like, it was real startup at that point, obviously.
Yeah.
So doing research around the world around strategic philanthropy. What is philanthropy? What's high impact philanthropy? How do you serve donors? What do donors want? How do you serve a community? How do you give money away? Like, all these questions, I was like, whoa, this is so interesting, you know? And as my time went on within the organization, I just really developed a heart for thinking more strategically about how we give money away, and obviously seeing that a lot of philanthropy, traditional philanthropy, is focused on kind of BAU in a way, where we've got huge needs in our communities. And, you know, philanthropy is these charitable trusts that are, you know, giving money away to serve those needs. But where is the money going that actually sees in 5, 10, 15, 20 years us no longer giving money to that issue?
Yeah, well,
right?
this is the thing, is you don't want to just give people money. You want to give them the means to be able to work and help themselves, really.
Absolutely. And however, there's a lot of issues that are systemically, we've arrived at them through a number of different issues and systems. And so if we continue to do, and we absolutely need to do the school lunches, you know, as an example, you know, but why are so many kids going to school hungry? What are the factors that have influenced that to be a reality today?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And
Absolutely.
and sometimes I feel the government, I feel like they just throw money at a wall and just hoping something sticks.
I think everyone's doing the best they can. I'm going to be very diplomatic and say, but we need some strategic thinking in there, you know?
Because, I do wonder that. I'm like, why are kids going to school without any footwear or without any food?
It's not okay, you know?
And the problem is not actually the child. It stems somehow with the parents or the household or something that's happening within there that's dictating this kid not going to school.
Absolutely. And then what's the environment that family or those parents are in that have brought them to those circumstances as well, you know? So for me, I really wanted to understand, how can we keep asking why on some of these big issues? And, you know, as funding bodies, how can we facilitate more meaningful grant making? It's not saying let's redirect all the money to be more strategic, but it's saying where in the funding landscape are we funding things at a systems level to see a long-term intergenerational impact? And so part of, I guess, doing, like, thinking about that in terms of money going out, then I was thinking with Seed, it's like, okay, well, as a grassroots organisation doing the thing, how can we start to think more strategically around why we're doing what we're doing? How could we not do what we're doing in 10 years? How could we really solve a problem? And so if we're seeing a whole lot of young people come out of pipeline that need community, that don't have whānau, that don't know how to develop their potential, that lack resilience, have mental health challenges, and the list goes on, what do we need to do over here to be able to stop that pipeline of young people coming out this end? And so that's a space we'll probably get into over the next couple of years, real advocacy and research and development around, well, hang on, why do we even need to exist, and how can we actually solve a problem so that we exist in a different way in 5, 10, 15 years?
Do you have a lot of debate over it though? Because I'd imagine everyone would have, different thoughts on how you can solve the problem. It's just like how with politics, people, everyone has a comment on how they think they can fix the issue. 9 times out of 10, people don't know what the hell they're talking about, myself included. So even when it comes to this stuff, so, you can solve poverty by doing this. No, you can do it this way, or you can do it that way. And I don't think it's as simple as that. I mean, obviously,
it's not simple.
Yeah. And
otherwise it would have been done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you're more on the inside than, say, I am. So obviously you know a lot more than I do.
But it's not, I think it's about understanding what those lived experiences are, listening, asking great questions like what you're doing with your podcast, asking great questions to understand what are the different circumstances. Like one of my mentors will say, I'm obsessed with why. Like I am just relentless. And sometimes with some serious analysis paralysis of just going, why, still not making sense. Why? And so often it's more about entertaining different ideas and different views and different perspectives.
Do you ever go into any of these communities and try and spend some time with the specific people?
I haven't done that in my work in philanthropy per se, but in my work with Seed, absolutely. I'm not sitting in my own head just kind of thinking about this and doing that. It really is informed and led by what I hear, and so absolutely we're asking those questions. And my lived experience with mental distress as well, that has informed a lot of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, because that suffering was insane. That was a really hard time in my life. And, why did I get there? Why was I addicted to drugs? Why did I get drug-induced bipolar schizophrenia? Why was that so hard to overcome? Why were there so many challenges? And so...
Because it's a big problem in New Zealand.
Oh, we have a crisis in the mental... there's a mental health crisis. And so why are we in that space? And you can't just say, oh, young people don't have resilience or...
Well, I think it's also... We have a bit of a culture here in New Zealand where we like to celebrate. We do. But then sometimes I feel we use alcohol and other forms of drugs to mask an issue, and we don't actually deal with the root cause of it.
Absolutely.
And I don't actually know why that is, though. What's caused that? Say for example, we binge drink here, whereas there's places in Europe or say in Japan, where you can just drink alcohol, but they're a lot more. What's the word? A lot more. What's the word?
Restrained?
Yeah, restrained, or just a lot more. They're just mature or responsible with their drinking,
Yeah.
But I don't understand why we do it here.
It's definitely like a culture thing. It's a bit of a norm to, hearing what you're saying about moving here from Auckland and the challenges around. You're not into sport, you're not into, say, pottery class or whatever. So what do? Well, you might go out and meet people, having a few drinks, house party there, and it's that can't be the only way.
I've never been... a real hardcore drinker per se. I mean, I have the odd beer now and then, but I think a lot of that stems from the fact that growing up, I was subjected, not within my family, but more around a lot of the social groups I saw, and I saw a lot of the negatives from drugs and alcohol. Yeah. So it kind of put me off.
I wish I had seen... I saw the same thing,
but then
and
also,
was curious.
But here's the thing.
Why?
Here's the thing, because as a young person, and everybody wants to feel included, and there's always peer pressure, and you want to be accepted by your peers, and you want to receive affirmation, and sometimes you might do something. Maybe, and there's a curiosity aspect as well. It's like, I want to try this. But I also know for myself, I know my weaknesses, and I know I have a very addictive personality. Once I get stuck into something,
you're all in.
I'm all in, 100% in. So that's why I've never done any drugs of any kind, because I'm
that's
like,
massive.
Yeah.
Well done, you. That's mad self-control.
But that's only because I was able to acknowledge my own weaknesses, right?
Yep.
But sometimes you're not even aware of what your weaknesses are.
No way.
Subconscious thing.
Absolutely. I had no idea that, I had an addictive personality. I didn't understand that I probably had undiagnosed mental health issues as a teenager. And so for me, using drugs and alcohol was like this, like escapism, was like, oh, finally, it's quiet in there. So many questions. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but I like to ask questions.
But that's good. You're like me.
Yeah. So, and I just wanted to have fun. Like, I just wanted to just shut up there and let's just live. And unfortunately, it just became the snowball thing. And I think too, addiction meets an unmet human need. That's something I read recently. And for me, if I look back, I was looking for real friends,
and that's actually pretty hard to find.
It is hard to find, to just radically be yourself and accept who you are, your quirks and all. Yeah. To show up in the world like that and say, okay, where's my weirdos?
Yeah, but it's like, weirdos.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a bit of a weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, you nerd or you clown but
I think there's other nerds and clowns. It's like, I want to find my people. Where are you?
Yeah.
But there's also a bit in there too around like just being okay with what made me me. And, like I ask a lot of questions. I am curious. I do like to ask why 10 times. And so if I had a bit of direction, maybe that was like, okay, here's somebody you could ask 10 questions to, and kind of engage at that level.
Yeah. But because you've been through what you've been through, that means if someone else is going through something similar,
that's it.
You'll have the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to help them out, right?
At times, yes.
Like, let's say if you and me both spoke to someone who's doing drugs and stuff, like, I wouldn't be able to relate as much as you can, because you've actually been in that situation.
That's right.
So you'll see it from a different perspective.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's why lived experience is so important in informing what we do, from a funding perspective.
That's right.
If you're somebody, say yourself, and you've been put in a decision-making position, and you're to make a decision on how best to solve the mental health crisis, and you have no lived experience.
Yeah.
You have no connection to the issue. This is just, for example. And then you're given $50 million to decide how best to invest, And sometimes what happens is there isn't any consultation with the people with the lived experience, or the people with the lived experience, their experience gets fed back, but for whatever reason, decisions are made, and what actually would have really cut through there, it just doesn't happen. So I think it's so important, like I've realized now, to own my truth and to own my story and to share that, because one, I can find my people.
Yeah.
I can find my other crazy people. And two, though, it helps us make better decisions, and I can align that with, something I'm passionate about, which is philanthropy. Yeah.
So with philanthropy, in terms of funding, when the money is, a grant or fundraising or whatever it is, and it's funded to a specific thing, is there anyone that can actually provide some insight into that situation who's been in it? Like, when you worked there, were you working in conjunction with people who knew a lot more than, say, yourself? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. That was so important for us.
I sometimes wonder, using politics as an example, is a lot of these people that are funding or allocating money, they might not have necessarily been in that situation. So and
that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it is not. I think that's important to note.
Because if you can be a leader that, ask the right questions to see that a good process is followed, you don't need to be the one with all the answers. You just need to ensure that you're putting good process in place,
That's right.
And so when we did our grant, we worked with some groups that, had lived experiences, were led by that community for that community. It was a really fascinating process to go through, just in terms of learning, what that can look like when you engage with different individuals on issues that those communities are affected by, and really just say, how can we help you, rather than we're here to save the day, we've got the money, we'll decide what happens. It's a very flipped approach.
Can you get a bit frustrated though with, because you want to allocate money to a cause, but then you're not sure? Because here's the thing, I think sometimes individuals don't want to acknowledge their own flaws or their own decision making, and they just blame others, like, it's my parents' fault or it's the government's fault. And I see this all the time. It's like, and look, life is not fair. People get dealt a bad hand, but I do think no one is going to fully stop you from educating yourself or bettering yourself. And I think it's a matter of sometimes teaching these people that ability.
At times, yes, but at times there are so many circumstances that are really holding people back. I mean, to not even be able to know where your next meal's coming from.
Yes.
You can't think about, how am I going to get educated? Or, you're thinking, how are my kids going to get their school uniforms because we don't have any money? I mean, that place is so far down Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we were to go there, that the thought of moving to another stage, I mean, and there's many reasons why people have arrived in such difficult financial circumstances. I've been following Raising Ziggy on Instagram, and she's... Have you heard of her?
I have heard of the name, but I have not seen the...
She is phenomenal. She is shining a light on so many different things for families at the moment, and in particular, how we donate food around this time of year. And she was just getting the most remarkable stories sent into her that she was sharing on her Instagram about why people are going to food banks at this time of the year, and just kind of fully blowing off the rhetoric around, you could have saved, you could have worked harder, you could have gotten a different job. The experiences of people living in poverty in this country is unbelievable. So
yeah. I do... I'll give you an example though. So, because obviously Auckland, for example, is ridiculously expensive. And part of the reason I moved is because with the type of work I was doing, I was like, well, the cost of living is cheaper. I can actually afford to buy a house down here. And where some people, they complain about their situation, like say their situation in Auckland, but they have the means to actually
relocate
if they want to, but they just can't justify it in their head.
That's a mindset thing, right?
It is.
You've got the means, there's probably a different set of circumstances if you can't even think past, how are we going to put food on the table today, let alone, do you know what I mean? It's a scarcity mindset. It's different place.
I get a bit frustrated with some of my Auckland friends though, because they complain about all the time about Auckland and house prices and their rent and stuff, and I'm like, look, I get it, I was in there, but I'm like, you can move. No, we can't move. I'm like, why not? That
speaks to your mindset. You've realized, like, I'm not going to be a victim of this circumstance. I am going to use my power of choice to decide where to next. So,
because that's a situation where those people have the means to get out. When you're talking about food banks and stuff, that is a completely different thing. I do find it weird though. Like, a lot of these grocery stores and takeaways places and stuff, when it gets to the end of the night, they just dump all the food. I think there's actually something in Paris that they recently did where at the end of the night you're actually allowed to give food.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I know Go Eco does a bunch of work around food collection with Carvolution and redistribution.
Yeah.
And they've actually got this other service where if you've got excess fruit and veg on your property, they'll actually come and pick it up and redistribute it to their... I think they've got like a free store where people can go in and grab stuff for free. I'm like, wow, that's such a good concept,
I just find the whole thing bizarre, when you got all these people that are starving and that we're throwing away food. And you've been to Cambodia. I mean, I've been to India.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah. So you probably have a good idea of what poverty is in Asian countries. It's on a whole another level compared to here.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, that really, I did a massive 180 on a lot of my views and stuff once.
Yeah, wow. When was that? When did you go?
Last year.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And what did you do while you were over there?
Well, because my partner's Indian, so I went mainly to see her family and stuff. But she has real rich family and real poor family.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just one of those things you can't avoid. I mean, you literally land in Mumbai, you look to your left, and there's just slums for miles, and you can't actually avoid it. Like, everywhere you walk, you could see massive buildings and then slums next to it. We were in this, I think it was like a $10 million apartment.
Whoa.
And then you look out the window and it's just slums. Wow. So it messes with, mind blowing. Yeah, it is mind blowing. And I mean, there were a number of times where I cried.
Yeah, wow.
Just because of, it's like, man, and here I am complaining in New Zealand, about stupid little things like, oh man, house prices and, and
it's such a good perspective.
Yeah. I do think that traveling really enhances the mind.
Absolutely.
I think if you actually I think a lot of Kiwis don't realize how privileged they are.
Yep.
And because, I mean, traveling anywhere from New Zealand is
a massive undertaking.
Yeah, and it's expensive.
And again, another privilege.
Yeah, it is expensive, and and most people they'll go to Australia because that's the cheapest place. But if you actually, and when people go on holidays, they're not going to Cambodia or India or some, but the majority aren't, right? They'll go to America or Fiji or some holiday. They're not going to go.
Raro.
Yeah. So, and I think like if you took every single Kiwi and then you put them in, say, Cambodia or something for like 2 months, and then you brought them back, I think a lot of them would probably appreciate what they have.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But there's certainly so many people here living in terrible circumstances.
Oh, yeah, there are. No doubt.
Cambodia was an interesting story. I would have been about 14, I think.
So what was the reason you went?
My parents were really... I was a challenging teenager, let's say that. Sorry, Mum and Dad. And one day they said, pack your bag, we're dropping you off and you're going somewhere. And that place ended up being YWAM in Brisbane, a Christian mission organisation.
Oh, wow.
And, I found out I was going to Cambodia for 2 weeks on a missions trip. And... absolutely hated my parents for dropping me off and all that rah-rah. And then after probably day 3, I was just like, oh my goodness, Gemma, like this is a perspective. And I think too, that really solidified a really strong value of service in my being, at that time, volunteer tourism wasn't a thing. We would have been probably one of 3 groups of Western people I saw in Cambodia the entire time I was there. This is over 10 years ago. And tourism wasn't really big there or anything. But we were working in an orphanage out of Phnom Penh and, working with kids. All the children at the village in this orphanage were HIV positive and had no family members left whatsoever. And so that, the owners of the orphanage, that's what they wanted to do, that's what they wanted their focus to be. And then they also worked with women to get them off the streets out of prostitution and making quilts that were then sold to the Westerners that took them back to their countries. And, it was just remarkable to spend time with these children. And some of them were my age and older at the time that had the most abundant mindset, the biggest hearts, so much kindness. I remember one day they got a big delivery of jewelry from some random group. I don't know how the jewelry got there. And the kids were sharing it with, all the volunteers. And, it was just like, wow. And here I am, being a little shit, not being grateful for what I have, the opportunity to be educated, to grow up in Australia, And so I think I went back 2 more times and I brought girlfriends with me. Each time we went back, and we'd come in and do a project and we'd fundraise before we went so that we had some money to give. I would definitely not recommend doing volunteer tourism. It has become its own industry, and it's really difficult to decipher. Has an orphanage been set up because it's going to attract money from people from other countries? And so we're going to take children, or children will be given because they can create some money through that.
Oh, yeah.
It's terrible. So I wouldn't really recommend doing that now, but that was definitely a lot of soul searching for me, and a real heart for service and giving back,
I think it would be very difficult for anyone to go and see those sort of things and not be impacted in some way.
Yeah. It's so heavy. I just remember feeling so heavy, and we'd drive past all the big factories where Nike and, all the, clothing stuff was made, and people were, $1 an hour or whatever it was. And just the living conditions was just unbelievable. So a real perspective on, what really matters.
Definitely. Because I know a lot of Kiwis that have only travelled to Australia.
Yeah.
And then I think it gives them a bit of a distorted reality, and they're like, New Zealand sucks, because they're comparing it to Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I heard a lot at the start with Seed was Hamilton sucks. And I was like, okay, so what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
What would you like to do? How can you contribute to making this a city you'd be really proud to live in? And so that just changed the conversation from let's sit around and complain about how silly, whatever, boring, whatever. It's like, okay, cool. Well, what can we do about it? Let's do something.
Because I got a lot of crap when I moved from Auckland down here.
From
Auckland. It's like, really? You're moving to Hamilton?
Oh, I love the Tron. It's such a cool place.
I do think it gets a lot of unnecessary heat from people, and they just bag on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Without even knowing what they're talking about, or their view of it might be from, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. So it gets a bit annoying for sure. But we're gonna. An interesting thing that Jason Dawkins said when I went to one of those Grow Waikato events that Jamie Strange hosts, and Jason Dawkins spoke there, and he said one of the things that Hamilton needs is a nighttime economy.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was interesting.
More restaurants and bars open?
I think he was specifically stating that it doesn't really have much of a nightlife. I am probably paraphrasing here, and Jason, if you're watching this and I've got it wrong, my bad. But
come on the show, Jason.
Yeah. So, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, like cool stuff to do at night. Maybe not like food and eating, but like when I go back to Brisbane, there's so much cool shit on. Like, ferry rides. You can go on the Eye in South Bank. There's markets. There's just like weird. Like down the Gold Coast, you can go to Infinity. It was just like all these rooms. You've got to try find how to get to the next room.
Yeah.
We've got The Escapist.
I mean, I remember when Paula was on here and we were talking about, revitalizing the CBD, so to speak. We both acknowledged that it's not something that's just going to be instantaneous.
Yeah.
It's something that's going to gradually happen over time. I mean, I've just seen over the last month or two, there's all these new restaurants and Naughty Nan, and then even Movenpick's open. Yeah.
And the theatre will be great once that's in. I mean, that's going to activate majorly a whole lot of vibrancy in the CBD. And I think seeing more of those townhouses in town, like more.
Yeah.
Like
because some people prefer that, in a city living. Yeah.
Yep. And it's not, it's not. Oh, gosh, I was going to say it's not too expensive, but it is expensive to buy a house.
I mean, I discussed this with Calvin, but I was like, affordable housing is not really affordable housing. And he's like, it isn't.
Yeah. We managed to get our place by, I think we had 7 people living with us at one point. And my partner's parents also contributed so that we could get in, like on the deposit. And like we just had to think differently about how we could own a home. And it wasn't that we will never be able to own a home at this rate with my work in Charities. Yeah. We won't be able to own a home on our own. But does that matter? Like, I think at times too, there's this like mentality of you got to own your home. And it's like, why? Why do we need...
I think the perception is so, when you retire,
Right.
There's
okay.
some money. Yeah,
Yep.
I think
There's something there.
there's something there. You know, you don't want to be working, I suppose, and still paying rent when you're 85.
True.
Yeah, so probably that's
How
the
does
mindset.
it work in those European countries? I know there's a lot of European countries where it's quite the norm to rent.
Yeah, although I do think, because, you know, we don't have capital gains tax.
Yeah.
And so much of our investments are in residential property.
True.
You know, there's people out there who have like own 80 houses, you know, which I think is a bit greedy.
Well, I don't know enough about the housing stuff to get into that.
But like, you know, and I was recently in Auckland and I caught up with quite a few people, and you know, I just mentioned housing and they just get really depressed. I mean, if you think of it, how hard it is for us, can you imagine how hard it will be for the next generation?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It's all got to be thought differently, you know, the way we're thinking about it now. It's just
I had a very interesting chat with Calvin about it when he was on, because you know how he used to be city growth manager of Hamilton City Council, so he was speaking on how people can actually have tenure. You know, they might not own the land, but they could own the house.
Yeah, true. Yeah, different models, eh?
Yeah, different models, and I think that's the way going forward. I mean, a lot of these big cities around the world, people don't own homes; they just live in apartments or townhouses, and I kind of feel that's the direction Auckland's going. I mean, every time I go up there, there's a new high-rise and a new townhouse.
Well, I went up the other week and I just felt like I was in another country. There's so much like hustle. There's so much energy.
It's changed. It's changed a lot within the 4 years that I've been gone from there.
Yeah.
It's changed quite dramatically. Yeah. So I definitely notice it. But even some of my friends come down here from Auckland. They're like, oh, wow, Hamilton's way different. You know? Yeah. So
I actually love Hamilton so much. This is a perfect pace, I think. It's my little pitch for the Tron. It's the perfect pace. It's not too, like, rah, 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 rah. There is the most, you know, just ordinary people doing remarkable things. Just, you know, and it's not...
have a lot of insight to that, yeah.
It's not this big rah, rah. It's just, you know, people are really... I think for me, the biggest thing I noticed moving from Australia was just how aligned people were to a particular set of values, where they care about the environment, they care about each other. There's not this real, like, thirst for material things. The culture in Australia was very different for me.
Well, that's a good segue. Like, so what are the major differences you found? Because did you live in Brisbane?
In Brisbane,
yeah. And then you moved from...
Brisbane to the Tron.
Was that a massive cultural change? Because I know my partner, she lived in Sydney for 5 years.
Whoa.
And then she moved to New Zealand, and then she ended up living in Rotorua.
Okay.
And, like, that was a huge culture shock for her.
Yeah. I mean, it
going
was
from
massive.
a city of 5 million to 50,000. You know, I think Brisbane's 2 million? Is it 2 million?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know. But for me, it was just like I was 17 when I moved here. Like,
so what made you move here?
It was my my drug addiction. So I had some challenges getting into rehab in Australia. They were all full. You know, there's a really big wait list, and it was kind of like rock bottom for me. I really needed to get the help at that point in time. And so did you make the decision, or did your parents it was kind of, my grandparents actually took me in. My granddad called and said, hey, I've got a place, you can come stay with us for a bit. And I've always admired my granddad so much. He's a really, really awesome businessman and big in his church, like really gives back a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, wow, some time with granddad and a free ticket to New Zealand. Heck yes. And I'll be back soon, you know. All my friends are here. My life's here, whatever. And, yeah, it wasn't until I got to New Zealand and was with my grandparents and went into detox that I realised how bad it was and, you know, how addicted I was. And then my mental health issues coming to surface where I was having visual hallucinations. I wasn't able to sleep. I was suicidal. It was a really, really dark time. And so when I got admitted into the mental health services here in New Zealand, I just, really realised the amount of work that needed to be done to make me whole again. And once I finished that journey, well, you don't really finish. You're always developing and changing. But once I finished in the mental health service, I was like, wow, this place has given me my life, you know, and I feel so connected to the environment here. Like, I love spending time in Raglan. I love the Taitua Arboretum. I enjoy, you know, Waihi and the Coromandel and the Waikato as a region, I was just like, this is my home now. So
Do you feel weird when you go back to Brisbane now?
Oh, hugely, but that's where my family is. So I've got a niece and another niece on the way. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. My parents are there. My grandma's there.
Yeah.
So,
but do you feel like you've gone, because I know when I go back to Auckland sometimes, I feel like I've gone through a time warp.
yeah.
You feel
In
like you've
what
gone
way?
back in time? Like just, I don't know, like I've gone back to 2014 or something. It's real buzzy sometimes, eh?
Well, it's almost really, for me, it's my, that was a place that I had a different identity in. And so when I go there, it's that identity that comes up for me that I'm like, oh, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable. Like, I'm not that person anymore, but this environment brings this out of me. How do I be more mindful of who I've become and show up there?
And
So,
do people back home in Brisbane still think you are the person that you were when...
don't care.
Yeah.
I am me now,
I know, because my dad's from the UK, and then every time he goes back, they still think he's like this little drunk shit,
Oh,
they still think of him as 24, even though he's like 67 now.
It's weird,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's okay,
It's So I'm just curious if it was similar. But does an element of you miss Brisbane at all?
I miss my family.
Yeah.
I miss being able to create memories and raise my son. Now that my son's here, raise my son with his cousins.
Yeah.
But that's what FaceTime's for.
Yes, it is. I did contemplate moving to Brisbane at one point.
Oh, really? Why
Yeah.
Brisbane?
Oh, because I like city life, but I don't like ridiculous busy city life like
True.
Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like about Hamilton actually is its close proximity to everything.
Yes. Love that.
Like hour and a half to Auckland, hour and a half to Rotorua, hour and a half to Tauranga, 2 hours to Taupo. Like I'm supposed to be going to New Plymouth at some point, and that's only a couple of hours away. So whereas, within Australia, for example, Sydney's like quite isolated. Mm-hmm. Well, all the major cities, except for Brisbane, really are quite isolated because Brisbane's connected to, you still got the Gold Coast, which is what, 2
Gold
hours?
Coast.
2 hours away?
Oh, hour and a half.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
Sunny Coast up the other way.
The only thing I think I'd have trouble with is the heat, particularly at the moment, with
oh my
40
gosh.
degrees. And
It's so hot there at the moment.
Yeah.
And the fires. And
so
it's the smoke.
Yeah, it's really, really bad.
It is.
And it makes you, we complain about rain a lot in New Zealand. But, it's times like this when you see what's happening with Australia that, we need to appreciate it because there's a lot of people there praying for rain.
Totally.
They just want rain.
Yeah. It's hard.
So, yeah.
But I love our city. It's a cool place. I'm glad you chose Hamilton.
Yeah, well, I don't plan on going anywhere.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. It is.
And I think the energy's changing as well, like you say, there's things popping up in the CBD more and more. And now that the theatre, that's going to be massive for our city and for our region. And, I think there's a real entrepreneurial spirit from a lot of young people as well.
Yeah, there is.
And in time, like you say, things it takes this bit and then that bit and things are slowly appearing. And I think just naturally, being part of the energy that is creating something, we're going to start to see a bit more vibrancy,
Totally.
It's cool to be part of that time in the city's development too.
Yeah. I recently had National MP David Bennett on here.
Yep.
He was an interesting guy to talk to. By the time this airs, that will already be out. But he was talking about growth in Hamilton and what he considered the actual key things to make it grow. And he said the main thing was extending the expressway to Tauranga. In Cambridge. And the reason he said this was actually interesting. But he said the reason is because if Auckland and Tauranga build their own expressway that bypasses Hamilton, then a lot of the growth, because Tauranga is growing at a faster rate than Hamilton.
Uh-huh.
And he said once Tauranga's population gets above Hamilton's, then they have the ability to go to Wellington and start asking for more government money.
Right.
We want a university. We want more government based here,
Right.
So I was like,
That's interesting insight. I
yeah.
didn't even know.
Yeah, I didn't even know. It was just,
Yeah.
That's why it's interesting just talking to politicians because they have a lot of insight.
Yeah,
Just
it's cool. It's cool being a young person asking questions. Like, heaps of people know heaps of stuff, hey? We just got to ask stuff a bit more.
Yeah. And part of the reason why I do this podcast is so I can ask people questions. It's particularly politicians because I don't feel they really get the platform to really say what they want to say.
Yeah, right.
Or need to say. They go on News Hub or the project or something.
And you get a 30-second clip.
Yeah, I remember when Louise Hutt was on there. She had like 3 minutes to convey her entire campaign.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, come on, that's impossible.
But that's media.
Yeah, that is media. So
but you're shaking it up with a longer podcast.
Well, trying to. It's all about trying to get the guests on, though. That's the hard part. But hey, I might wrap up there.
Awesome.
But thanks so much for coming on. So if anyone wants to get involved with Seed Waikato, what is the best way for them to do that?
Probably to just drop a message to the Facebook page or drop an email to kiora@seedwaikato.nz.
Are you guys on Instagram and Twitter and stuff as well?
Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook.
And then what is it? Just Seed
Waikato.
Seed Waikato?
Yep.
And that's it?
That's it.
Cool. And then make sure you go to the events as well, even if you don't want to volunteer. At least go to the event so you can see the magic and the hard work that Gemma and her team have put on.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, that's the show, guys. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe. And until next time, stay safe.
Wicked.